Hello, and welcome to the Draft Digital Spotlighters. My name is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I am honored to have with me Erin Wright, international best-selling author and the mother or founder of the Wide for the Win movement. Erin, welcome.
Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here. We even have some questions from the Wide to the Win Facebook group, which we're going to get to in a second. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask the questions in the comments on either Facebook or YouTube, and we may be able to pop them up and get started. But Erin, let's go back to your origin story as a writer. What do you write, and when did it all start for you?
Sure. So I write contemporary Western romance, and I'm your typical story. I started writing when I was a very young child. Won writing contests. Got that $50. Thought I was pretty cool, but I didn't think that you could actually make money being an author. That's just not how you made a living, and so I did a bunch of other things. And then I was always interested in publishing, though, and so I followed like some of the agents and things where I was learning, hopefully someday, how to be traditionally published. And then I stumbled across a writing group one day online and started hanging out with them. I mean, I'm not cool enough to be an author, but I can hang out with authors, right? And so then I started proofreading for people because they needed somebody to edit their stuff, and I'm pretty good at that sort of thing. And so, sure, I'll do that, make a little bit of side money, and then I got this really horrific manuscript from an author who had bought it from a ghostwriter. And it was so bad that when he got the first half of the book, he told the ghostwriter, "You know what? Don't write anymore. I'm just going to take what you wrote and try and salvage something here. But this is horrific." And so he gave it to me to proofread the first half, and with the idea that maybe with an outline or something, I could write the second half of the book and actually finish it up. And I thought, well, that won't be so scary. I'll only be having to write half a book, and I will be following an outline. This can't be so hard. And so I went to work on the manuscript, and I eventually emailed the author back, and I said, this isn't going to happen. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. You really just need to print it off and set it on fire, because just deleting it off your computer is not enough. And so he said, "Oh, all right. What do I do?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I think this is actually what you should do." And I helped him plot this whole story. And then, of course, I'm going to write this story. And then I turned it into a trilogy for him.
Wow.
So, yeah. So my first 3 books I've ever written were actually written under a completely different name that I don't get to share with anybody. But so after I finished those first 3, the guy was like, "Oh, please write more for me, write more." And at the time I was going to school, I was also a school teacher. And then I was also doing this sort of thing on the side. And my husband said to me, "Erin, you are an idiot, because you are going to work really hard to get a lot of student debt so that you can become a full-time teacher and be miserable and make very little money." Because it's always, education is so political now. And it's awful. So my best friend is a teacher. My sister's a teacher. My sister-in-law is a teacher. So I know what it's like to be a teacher. I've heard all the horror stories, and I was also teaching myself part-time. So yeah, he said, "You're an idiot. You need to go write for yourself." And I said, "Oh." He said, "You're making all these other people all this money. Why are you not making this money for yourself?" And I thought, I don't know. Do people actually want to read my books? I'm not that good. But, anyway, I got my husband to open up my eyes and show me the truth. And so I started writing for myself. Actually, my first book was written, the very first draft was written by my husband, which is kind of funny. People don't normally think of romance novels as being written by guys. And in my husband's case, this is actually, he wasn't very good. He It's okay.
You still love him though, right?
Oh yeah, very much. He's my best plotting partner in the world. He's fantastic. Anyway, so I took his original version and I made a whole bunch of changes to it and published it. And then eventually I actually took that version down and completely rewrote it from the ground up. Still the same storyline, but lots of upgrades, I guess, in the storytelling part of it, and re-released that book. So yeah, but my husband is my plotting partner. I don't think I could write without him. I have a really hard time with plotting. I get stuck. And so then I'll just go out and find my husband wherever he's at and say, okay, Reagan, talk to me. Tell me how I'm supposed to, what should I do next? And we'll go on long drives. And our anniversary was just a couple nights ago. And we spent our anniversary dinner at the restaurant talking about the plot of my next book. So very romantic.
Well, I'm fascinated by that because I mean the first 3 books you wrote, you started off with no confidence. I'm just going to show up and learn from these people. Then you basically made a trilogy out of the big mess that somebody had dumped in their lap. And then the first one was obviously your husband had plotted out a whole bunch of stuff and then you refined it. It almost feels like those are the both of you as a team, not only in your life, but in your writing, playing off of your strengths, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Very much so. He's a big theater geek. He actually taught theater at the college level for a couple of years. He's been in theater for like 30 years now or something, and he's only 40. But he's been in pretty much his whole life.
He's been in theater since he could walk.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very much him. So storytelling is really a strong suit for him. But the reason that it didn't translate well into romance is because, first off, he doesn't read any romance. He's not a romance fan. I don't really know why he thought that he should write a romance novel, to be honest with you. I don't know what made him think that. But plays are dramatic and, they have sad endings and they have, it's okay to be mysterious and weird and those sorts of things. In romance, it's not that. So it just didn't translate well, his theater background in that respect. But in terms of plotting with me, we can talk for hours. We're each other's best friends. We work on everything pretty much together. And so, he's an excellent plotting partner. In fact, he just started helping my friend Susie O'Connell plot her book. You should call him the plot doctor. Anyway.
I love that. So I have to ask you then. So you talked about at your anniversary dinner that you ended up plotting. Was that something that you had started the book on? I imagine you must have been bouncing things off of him as you were going, or does it happen where you get to a point and say, "Uh-oh, I really need you to help me figure these things out"?
Oh yeah. So when I very first start a book, we plot together, and then we just start talking. Okay, what is the background of the FMC? What's the background of the MMC? Because I write heterosexual, but it would be the same thing if I were to write male. But anyway, so what is the tension between them? Where should the book start going? And we'll talk for probably an hour, maybe hour and a half, and then I'm like, okay, that's it. I got to go write. And so I hide myself away and I just sit on my keyboard and I just write and get everything out of my brain. And then I start trying to write the outline. And that's when all of the points of the story that we didn't discuss before start to show themselves.
Right.
Okay, we discussed how they met and we discussed the end, but like the middle is usually where like we didn't discuss anything, right? Like what do they do? How do they actually fall in love? That sort of thing. So then I go back to him and I say, all right, I need another round of plotting. And so then we work on it. And then it's usually after that, it's just refining. So.
Wow. So at what point in your writing journey did you realize that it was a full-time thing, or did you just jump in right away when you started doing that with your husband?
So it took me a year and a half, 2 years, I want to say, before I was able to go full-time, because I was teaching. And so I can't just quit in the middle of the school year. And then no bueno. And then also I needed to be able to make enough money, right? And I'm not a huge ads person. I don't really I do not like cost per click ads, pay per click ads, whatever you want to call them. They're just not my cup of tea. And so I really struggled, just in terms of I have to write enough books to have a big enough back catalog to be able to sell things. You're not going to make money off one book. And so in the meanwhile, I continued to help people proofread their books. I was a virtual assistant. I did all those sorts of things. I formatted people's books in vellum for them, all those sorts of things, and built websites, whatever I needed to do to pay the bills. And as time went on and I was making more and more from my books, I was able to back off on those side projects until I was finally able to say, okay, I'm not gonna do anything but write now. And that's really cool. My husband, he runs a paid newsletter, Full Heart Romance, is for romance authors. And then he also does like really cool woodworking and metalworking stuff, but that's mostly a summertime thing. And if you imagine, he sells them at craft fairs. In this last year, craft fairs haven't been exactly a real big thing. And so, yeah, I am by far the primary breadwinner of the family. So I had to make sure that we could afford to do this before I jumped in.
Now, I also wanted to highlight something because people may be noticing that you don't have the video on, and you, very much like our very own dulceted toned Kevin Tumlinson, you and your husband are traveling minstrels. No, you're in a vehicle traveling and don't always have access to really strong Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so we decided that we would hit the road and start traveling full time. So we have our truck and travel trailer, and been traveling around the U.S. It's been a lot of fun. And then we settled down here in Idaho for a bit because of COVID-19.
Right.
Not a great time to be out and about. A lot of campgrounds actually shut down. It became pretty much impossible to be a full-time traveler at that point. So we went back to home base. My parents have a farm here in Idaho. And so we're here. And then actually my parents are religious, and they actually just received a mission call and will be in California for 18 months. And so I have agreed to stay here until April of 2022. Not that I'm counting or anything, but
we're looking after the homestead, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be taking care of things here while my parents leave. So we won't be traveling for a bit. But yeah, so internet can sometimes be sketchy for me.
Well, I find it fascinating because I'm sure you can write from anywhere, but I bet you your husband is probably thrilled that he's got to spend this summer being able to do more woodworking and stuff, right? Because I imagine it's harder on the road than it is when you're in a place where you can store supplies.
Exactly. And my parents, it's this old farm, and my family has been here for several generations. And so my husband uses old barnwood to create these really cool looking flags, American flags and Betsy Ross flags, and just really fun things. And he's so talented. Anyway, being here on the farm, he can blacksmith and he can do all these things and really thrive. When we're out on the road, really the only thing he can do is the paid newsletter. And then he's usually out fishing after that.
So I want to get into you were successful, main breadwinner in your household. And then you saw a way to help other authors be successful publishing Wide. What was the whole genesis of Wide for the Win, and the what we now know is the Wide for the Win movement, or what do we call them? The Widelings, Wide winners.
I think we sort of settled on Widelings, but we haven't. We were planning on doing a poll in the group, Susie and I. So we should probably do that and make it official. Yeah. So. It's funny because I'm like everybody else. When I first entered the self-publishing world in 2016, I went into KU because literally every single author that I knew at that point was in KU. And so going wide was just like something, I don't know, weird that like nobody actually does that though. Right. And so I got into KU, and then Amazon started stripping people of page reads and shutting down accounts. And there was just this huge uproar, as there always seems to be at Amazon. And I thought, this is for the birds. I do not like this. I am not I'm not much of a risk taker, honestly. You know, I was a teacher, I was a librarian. I tend to not be a risk taker. And so this whole, like, you could work super hard and get people to read your books, and then Amazon just gets to take the page reads away because they feel like you were a scam artist. Like, whoa, I don't think so. And so I ended up wide, and because that was kind of unusual in my group, my circle of friends, I became kind of known as like, oh, she's the chick who went wide, right? So people ask me questions if they had any, and I started making friends with people who write in my genre who are also wide, and started to become more and more successful. And more people are asking me questions and asking me, will you write a book? Will you start a group? You know, these sorts of things. And I actually really hate Facebook, like with a passion. I don't like discussing politics, and I don't like discussing religion. And so pretty much Facebook posts are hell. So when people were telling me that I should start a wide group, I was like, no, thank you. I have better ways to torture myself. And I finally decided, all right, I'm gonna do this. And so I started inviting all of my white friends, and I just thought, you know, maybe we'd have like 100 people or something, and that would be cool. But as you've noticed, we just surpassed the 2,000 mark. And I'm really kind of in shock of how big we are. I honestly didn't think there were that many wide authors out there, but I think that we get drowned out. You know, you're in a group where it's just KU. Everybody's in KU. It's all about what are you doing? How are you ranking on Amazon? And you just sort of get drowned out, and people talk down to you like you're an idiot for being wide. I've literally had that, like, well, you're just stupid for being wide. You know, you're leaving so much money on the table. And so I decided, you know what, let's have an oasis in the desert. And KU talk is not allowed in my little oasis.
Well, I have to say, when you were feeling that, you know, nobody was wide, I'd have to say, Grasshopper, that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of on the shores of the world's longest river. So I'm glad you discovered this beautiful oasis and created an oasis for authors. But I want to clarify something, because people do make the mistake when you say there's no Kindle Unlimited or KDP exclusivity talk, KDP Select talk in the Wide for the Win group. That doesn't mean you hate Amazon and you can't talk about Amazon. You just want to include everyone else because it's one of the only places where it's not all Amazon all the time.
Yeah. So the way that I phrase it is that I'm not necessarily anti-Amazon. You know, they do some nasty things, and they have more power than other storefronts do. So when they decide to be mean, they can hurt a lot more people. But I'm not necessarily anti-Amazon. Truly, I'm not. I am just pro all storefronts.
Cool.
So I feel like readers, to me, it's more of an inclusivity thing. Readers on other storefronts are just as important to me as readers on Amazon are. Not more important, not less important, just as important as the readers on Amazon. And so, I don't know, did you want to discuss my 10 tips?
Yeah, actually, I was going to go, because we did post to the Wide for the Win group and ask for some questions. So I'm going to post, Hattie said, how to successfully go wide if you've always been in Kindle Unlimited. I know going wide's a mindset thing. It takes time. So she asked, what do you suggest? What are some of the top things to do when you're just getting started going wide?
Yeah, so I would actually say that the first thing that you need to figure out is if you're going to go direct to various storefronts, or if you're going to use a distributor. You need to be setting up your accounts at all of the wide storefronts or the distributors, or both. I actually use all of the above. And make sure that you have all set before you want to go wide, because especially with COVID-19, that process can be a little slower at some of the storefronts. I personally would go direct to use a distributor. You know is the number one question that exists everywhere. And I just want to say that I personally recommend people use DD or another distributor. But
actually, Erin, can I interrupt for a second? Can somebody comment? I'm actually hearing that you're breaking up, and I'm wondering if it's on my end or if that's both ways. Alrighty. I am just waiting for a comment to see if people are having audio issues or if it's just on my side of things. Susie says she's hearing it too, so I'm wondering if the Wi-Fi is really broken up. Susie, am I breaking up as well? Sometimes, not often, Jimmy says. Okay. Everyone's breaking up. Breaking up is hard to do. Erin, can you still hear me? No, Susie says it was just Erin. So I'm, Stephanie says it can hear Mark just fine. So I am going to continue while Susie gets her audio back. Susie, jump back in as soon as you can. Susie, if you can DM Erin and let her know what's going on my end, that I'm still going to cover it. I was going to continue with some of the things. Erin had posted this phenomenal article about top 10 things she was doing. I think she was recommending. Erin has messaged me to say that her internet is wigging out, which we were a little bit worried about doing. But I'm going to continue until she pops back in when she'll gets that resolved. It was this amazing top 10 things to do when you're going wide. So I'm just going to kind of regurgitate some of that from my own memory. Now, one of the things she says that often happens, particularly is, Amazon is the world's biggest bookstore, of course. And so oftentimes people will do free giveaways. And what'll happen is with the free giveaway, they often will give away Amazon gift cards or Kindles. And what Erin has started to do was give away other devices, give away Apple devices, give away Nook devices, give away Kobos and other devices to be inclusive to all her readers. Otherwise, if you have a bunch of readers from wide platforms and you're only giving away Kindles, you're kind of saying to the Kobo people and the Apple people and the Barnes and Noble people, you don't matter as much. And that's a really valuable thing, which we forget about because, Amazon is the world's biggest bookstore. Erin, are you back with us now? Can you hear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine. So I'm so sorry. You did break up. I was just starting to share some of your wonderful top 10 article, but you were talking about distributors. And I think, and I'm not prodding or poking around, but I think you were saying you kind of think Drafted Digital was not too bad.
Right. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what happened with the internet there. Okay. So, yeah. So I actually use Drafted Digital to get to Apple. I have a MacBook. I have an iPad. I have an iPhone. My brother worked at Apple for years. I'm a total Apple fan, and I cannot stand the Apple platform. And I have quite a few wide friends, obviously, at this point. And this is something that is so common among wide authors, is that the Apple platform, there are two different parts to it. There's a product that you download, a program that you download, and then there's also a website, and one will override the other. And I actually got really screwed up with a BookBub because I uploaded a new manuscript. I went through and read my book and got all the typos and uploaded this manuscript right before the book went live. Right before the BookBub hit. And the Apple program, because I uploaded this new manuscript, reset my price back to full price. And the day of the BookBub, it went out, and so my Apple link wasn't included. I've also had Apple eat my pre-orders twice. And I've gone all the way up the chain of command at Apple, and there doesn't seem to be much desire on their behalf to figure out what's going on, because it only seems to affect Erin Wright. So that's cool. So I've lost literally hundreds of pre-orders at this point, people who pre-ordered my book and just will never get it. And they don't seem to, not only don't seem to want to fix it, but they don't seem to want to even get the people who pre-ordered the book whole. They just will never receive the book. So So I'm not really a fan of the Apple platform. And so I strongly recommend to people to use D2D or another distributor or any distributor at all. I use D2D to get to Apple, because I think the best part about it is not only do you not have to worry about their horrible, awful interface, but also one of the things people are constantly asking is, how do I get into in-house promos? And the thing about Apple is that they actually, it's easier to get into in-house promos if you are not direct with them, because distributors can get you into those promos. And so you're constantly posting about promos in the group, and I apply to those whenever they're applicable to me. But if you're going direct to Apple, it's really, really, really difficult to get into those promos. So using the distributor to get to Apple can actually help your sales by quite a bit. So
Yeah, I think the benefit there is that it's difficult for a retailer, especially, I mean, Apple's a massive company, but the very passionate, wonderful book people there are not as many of them. And
right.
there are hundreds of thousands of authors out there. So one of the things I think that, Drafted Digital and other aggregators like Smashwords will do is we'll get access to some of these promos and then curate from the author community, doing like not the hard work, but curating and pulling in information and making sure that all the data is there, and then saying, okay, here you go, merchandisers, you can kind of pick from here, which is kind of what a publisher does. I think maybe that's the benefit you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I've even done, I've worked with Apple to create an in-house promo. And so I had authors applying, and I looked through their catalog, made sure that they had reviews, make sure that they actually fit the theme that we were going for. And then I took my final curated list and presented it to Apple, and I said, okay, these are the people who I think should be in the promo, and then they actually picked from that list. And so I didn't have a final say, right? But I feel like I was kind of in D2D's position at that point.
You know what it's like. Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely do. Yeah, they included some people that I was like, oh, I wouldn't have included them over somebody else, but it's not up to me. So.
Yeah. So that is, it's fascinating. I started going on a list of some of the things from your wonderful article that you had recently shared, probably about a month ago. One of them was the giveaways. What's some of the other mindset stuff that's should be valuable for authors as they're thinking of going wide?
So one of the things I actually just mentioned was reviews. When I was putting together that list of books to submit to Apple, I had requirements in place of how many, at least not even reviews, but just ratings, because Apple will allow you to rate a book without reviewing it, right? And I was absolutely surprised by how many people had their whole catalog up on Apple, but had literally no ratings or one rating on their books. And it's because people are so used to emphasizing Amazon is the only place that it matters. And I find that really strange, because if that were actually true, it would mean that all wide readers are cyborgs who don't need social proof.
I can confirm. I read on a different platform. I am a pure human.
Yeah, I do too. And so I'm like, why is it that only Amazon readers need social proof? Readers on other storefronts need that also. So you need to be focusing on getting reviewers from all storefronts, not just Amazon. And so like part of my thing is that if you're going to join my ARC team, you have to review on 2 storefronts. Not on Amazon and Goodreads, on 2 storefronts. And people say, well, I don't read on any other storefront. And I said, well, that's cool, but you can set up an account with them. It's free.
Right.
And unlike Amazon, where you have a $50 buy minimum, there is no $50 buy minimum on any other storefront. Apple could be funky because maybe you don't have an Apple ID and whatever, and that's cool. But there's still Barnes & Noble, there's Kobo, there's Google Play, there's Smashwords. You can review on those storefronts. And if the reader ever decides to switch to another storefront because they get sick of Amazon, where do you think they're going to go to but a storefront they've already been going to write reviews on? And so that just makes them a little bit more comfortable with the other storefronts.
That's a really good reminder. I mean, because Amazon's like the soup Nazi. They'll kick reviews off for whatever reason they happen to, and every retailer has that right, of course. But the other retailers don't seem to be as vicious about kicking people out of their kitchen, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I say is that you may not need to get hundreds of reviews on a wide storefront, but you should have some. And that definitely helps. I've been helping people. This actually isn't in my top 10 list. But I've been helping people recently from Wide for the Win, just via Messenger, Facebook Messenger. They've reached out to me and asked me if I could help them figure out why it is that they aren't selling on other platforms. And I've gone through their catalog, and there's been a lot of things where it's actually been the metadata that is wrong, where a book, like book 1, 3, and 4 are in the series, but book 2 is missing. Author names spelled wrong.
Their own names.
Yeah. You wouldn't. There are a lot of different things, and people aren't looking at their catalog on a wide storefront with a critical eye and making sure that everything is showing up the way that they should. They're getting into weird categories that they shouldn't be in, and not in the correct categories, and it just their blurbs don't look good because they're not using the formatting correctly, and you really need to go through your wide catalog on every storefront and make sure that it looks the way that you want it to look, that everything is connected the way that it should be. All the categories are showing up the way that they should be. And you should be doing this on Amazon also, obviously, but I think a lot of people do, but forget to do it on wide storefronts. And that makes a massive difference.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because you're an American and I'm a Canadian, and everyone is intimate with Amazon because they've been in the business for so long. They were the first massive ebook store, but because I buy and read on Kobo, I am and worked there for a while. I am intimately familiar with that storefront. I know Amazon. I'm going to post a question because Charles asked this question, which is related to that. Do you have any thoughts on the Apple bookstore itself? Because I find I'm older, so I tend not to browse so much on my phone. I want to do it online, but I don't own a Mac. And so the experience is not so good. And Charles is asking, it's hard to figure out where you rank in the store on Apple. Do you have any tips on how people can check out the Apple store? Now, I do have an iPhone. Is there something I should be doing? What can Charles be doing?
Yeah. So Apple is different than I think pretty much every other storefront in that your rankings do not show on your book listing itself. So
Right.
if you go and look up Accounting for Love by Erin Wright, it's not going to tell you what ranking my book is in the store. So basically, you just have to go to the store and start looking through the lists to see where you rank at. I wish if there was a backdoor way to just pull up all of your rankings and look at them in one glance. There isn't that I'm aware. If there is out there and somebody knows, please tell me. I would find that awesome.
Do you mean you're browsing the US store, for example, and you go in, and when you drill down, it's probably sorted in some sort of popularity order by most likely sales?
Yeah, so it's hard to describe really because like on a MacBook, you have an app called Books, and so if you go in there, then it will be set up differently than it will be on your iPhone or your iPad, and so this might actually be something. Somebody did a screencast the other day in Wide for the Win showing me something. This might be something that I do a screencast on, showing how you do it on your Mac and navigate through the Apple Store because it can be confusing. I found the Apple Store quite confusing actually when I first started, so it took me a bit to figure it out. But yeah, it's hard to describe without showing you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Hey, maybe we have you back just to do something like that as well, because I'm sure that could benefit a lot of authors.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna pop up another question. This came from DF Hart, who asked in the Wide for the Win group, what are some good avenues to use to market audiobooks when you're wide? And DF says, I attempted to set up a BookBub ad with links other than to Chirp, which is a BookBub platform, and it didn't like that. So what tips have you seen for that?
Yeah, audiobooks wide is really a difficult platform or a difficult item to push right now because there aren't a lot of um, like paid newsletters and that sort of thing where you can just push your audiobooks. In fact, there are very, very few that do. And so I actually just listened to your interview with Brian Rathbone from your Stark Reflections. I listened to that just this morning, actually. And
He had some cool advice about audio on Google, didn't he?
yes, he is the king of audiobooks on Google. He really knows what he's doing. And so I would definitely suggest going back and listening to that. I personally don't do cost per click ads very often. I have looked at doing them for Chirp for my audiobooks, but I literally just got my audiobooks up a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
So
congrats.
I'm not, yeah, I am not an audiobook expert
Yes,
right
yet.
so yet. Exactly. Right now. Not at the moment, but I will be soon. No.
So I can offer a quick thing that came to mind when I saw DF's question is books2read.com, which is a free platform. You don't even need to use Draft to Digital to publish. You can use it for any books, any of your books, no matter how they're published. There is now the ability to add audiobook links. So right now, because I've been using them for a long time for the universal book links to all inclusive retailers wide, now been pushing the audio as well. So that single link now shows you, Apple and Audible and Kobo and Nook audiobooks, Overdrive even for some of the library markets. It's a small thing, but I think the more, as following Erin's advice, the more places you include when you send things out, like for giveaways and stuff, it just becomes habit that people go, oh, if I go here, I can see all the ebooks and I can see all the audiobooks. And that's a slow build for, I think, the industry as us authors try to figure that out, right?
Yeah. And one thing that I have heard, I haven't yet experienced this. But hopefully my next book bub, my audiobooks went live right after my last book bub did. Went out. But lucky me. But anyway, I've heard that if you have your books connected in this store so that like if you bring up the ebook, the audiobook link is right there. So that happens automatically with Google Play and Kobo, Apple, and Amazon. It does not happen with Barnes & Noble. They've got their own side storefront.
Right.
But just having that option there when somebody has a BookBub means that you'll quite a few authors have reported that they have made back the cost of the BookBub just on their audiobook sales. So having that audiobook linked is super important if you have a BookBub. So make sure that you've got.
Wow. See, yeah, because I just released audio for an entire series. I'm like, now I have to double down on trying to get a BookBub, please.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that is fantastic. I want to ask another question because you mentioned this very briefly, and I know you have experience as a library. A lot of authors, the way we talked about trying to navigate other retailers. What are some tips, or what are some of the misconceptions authors have about indie authors and libraries?
Oh, sure. So, when I was a librarian, the ebook revolution was really just happening. And so I got some grants and I brought in some e-readers and we were building up our e-reader or our ebook collection and our e-audiobook collection. And talking to other librarians at that point, there was a lot of discussion of like, oh, well, that one is really cheap. So that it's self-published and so that it's really crappy, right? Because when self-published books first hit the market, there was a real reputation out there that they weren't edited well, they weren't written well. You were only self-published if you couldn't get a traditionally published offer, right? And I think that that's really disappeared now. But there is still kind of a stigma in the library world of if something is too cheap, then it is probably not well done. And so if you price your books too cheap on a library platform, you will cost yourself sales and money. And so I usually do about 2 to 3 times, depending, my retail price is what my library price is. And authors say, oh, I've always priced really low, like 99 cents or $1.99 for libraries because I want to support them. And honestly, you're just hurting yourself because librarians won't take you seriously. That's the long and short of it. Librarians are used to spending, I mean, I was buying trade published audiobooks for like $120.
Wow.
It was ridiculous.
So, would
you
it be true to say then that if an author is selling to a library a $5 retail ebook, if they're selling it for $10 or even $20, they're actually supporting their library because they're giving them a deal?
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, that was an e-audiobook, right? $120. But yeah, the ebooks can be quite expensive, and then they're only good for so many checkouts, and then you have to buy them again and blah blah blah. Yeah, trade publishers are really, there's a couple of them that seem to be in kind of a mini war with librarians, and librarians are not very happy about it. It's hard to balance the budget because before you just had to buy paperbacks, hardbacks, and books on CD, right?
Okay.
And now there's all of those, plus you've got the e-books, the e-audio books. And as a librarian, how do you decide where to spend your money? And so you can decide to buy 2 or 3 indie audio books, or you can buy one trade published audiobook. And so you're going to be a deal. You may feel like you're not going to be a deal, but you are a deal. Compared to the trade published books out there, I promise you are a deal.
And that's good for authors to take to heart, because we suffer with self-confidence issues. You're not only a deal, you're a big deal.
That's right.
The lady asks this question, just so we can get very specific. What is too cheap for the library, or does it depend on what we're talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I've got some novellas that are short. They're like 25,000, 30,000 words, which for romance isn't super long. And so those I have at $10.99 for a library. I'm selling them $3.90 or $2.99 to retail. So you can see, I bumped up my prices, but it is for a library to bring in an ebook that they get to own this for forever. That's the thing. As a librarian, you are used to buying a paperback or a hardback that only works for so many checkouts, and then the dog ate it, or the patron never returned it, or it gets lost in the stacks, or it's just somebody threw up on it. I can't tell you how many books I got back with like bodily functions on the book. It was not pretty. And so
in times of COVID, that's even scarier than normal.
Right? Yes, I'm glad I'm not in the library world right now. Anyway, so you're not used to buying something that will literally last forever. As a librarian, this is a totally new world for them. And so to spend $10.99, which is cheaper than a hardback book by quite a bit, and then have that book for forever in their catalog is a smashing good deal. So, and people might think, oh my gosh, $10.99 for a 25,000 word novella, that's super expensive. But honestly, for a librarian, it's not.
Wow. I'm glad. Thank you so much for putting that into perspective, because with the deal that a lot of traditional publishers have, there's a limit. It's like 30 checkouts, and they've paid $60 for it or something like that, right?
And then you have to, after you hit your limit, it's 31 checkouts or something. Yeah, it's some funky number. Then you have to renew the contract, and you have to pay again. It's cheaper, but it's only, again, good for so many checkouts. And then you have to buy it again, and you just keep having to buy these ebooks and e-audiobooks, because traditional publishers realize, oh my gosh, we're really getting it in the shorts, because it used to be a big part of being a traditional publisher is the sale of the back catalog, because you have to have all the Daniel Steele books, and you have to have all the Tom Clancy books. And so this was how they were making a lot of their money, was through reprints through the years of all the old books. And now they don't have that anymore. And so they've kind of shut things down and made it quite a bit more expensive. So yeah, like I said, my cheapest is $10.99, and then I don't think I actually said, but like my novels, excuse me, I want to say are $17.99 maybe.
Okay.
For my libraries. So
Awesome. A question from Charles that I can quickly answer is, does D2D set library prices independent of the authors? I'm thinking you're meaning independent of the retail price. Yes, Charles, we have recommended prices we suggest to you, but it's completely up to you as the author, and you can and should set a different library price than the retail price, according to what Erin's recommending. Of course.
That's right. And it's super easy to do through Draft to Digital. I love you guys' platform.
Well, Erin, I love everything that you're doing. Love the amazing advice. I love the fact that you spent the last 45 minutes sharing your writer journey as well as so many amazing insights. Thank you. Please let our listeners and viewers know where they can find out more about Erin Wright.
Oh, sure. Well, there is erinwright.net if you'd like to go there. But if you're an author, and I'm assuming you probably are if you're listening to this, I highly recommend that you join us. And I do mean us. Mark is there also at Wide for the Win. It is a Facebook group. And my dad thought that I was saying wide for the wind, like wind in your sails, and he was very confused. No, it's win like you win a race. So you're going to go wide for the win. And we've got company representatives in there from all across. We've got BookBub, and we've got Ingram Spark, and we've got Kobo, and we've got Draft to Digital, and we got Free Booksy, and we got all sorts of people in there. Company reps who can answer your questions. They can help you get into in-house promos. The whole group is about nothing but being wide and how to succeed as a wide author. And so there's over 2,000 of us now, very exciting, and just a really fantastic group. So definitely, please come check us out there.
Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you again so much, and have a fantastic afternoon, Erin and everyone.
Thank you.